Who's actually going to get real value out of the Zebra 110-4 RFID label printer? And who should probably walk away before they spend a chunk of cash on a machine they'll never tap? Is it worth the price for a shop that prints a few dozen tags a day? Or does it belong in a high-volume warehouse where every second of downtime costs money? Those are the questions that keep most buyers up at night, because the wrong choice can mean a printer that sits idle or, worse, a device that breaks down right when you need it most. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at industrial label printers, the market felt like a minefield of industrial-grade hype and budget shortcuts. The Zebra 110-4 keeps popping up in forums for people who need RFID capability without sacrificing the ruggedness you expect from a Zebra machine. That alone makes it a strong candidate for anyone who already knows they need RFID tags. Think inventory tracking in a distribution center, asset tagging in a hospital, or even a manufacturing line where every component has to be traced. But the flip side is that if you're just printing standard barcodes for a small office or a boutique store, the extra RFID hardware can feel like overkill, both in terms of price and the learning curve for setting up the antenna and encoding data. Let's break down the everyday experience of actually using the 110-4. First, the setup. Out of the box, you get the printer, a power supply, and the usual ribbon and label roll. The RFID module is already built into the chassis, so you don't have to buy a separate add-in. When you connect it to a PC via USB or Ethernet, the driver installation is straightforward. Zebra's utilities walk you through network configuration, and the web interface is clean enough that a technician can have it up and running in under an hour. That matters because many small to medium businesses don't have a dedicated IT staff. A quick, guided setup reduces the risk of a half-finished deployment that later becomes a headache. Printing speed is another practical point. The 110-4 can crank out roughly 14 inches per second on standard paper and a bit slower when you add RFID encoding. In a busy shipping dock, that translates to printing a full pallet label in under a minute, which is fast enough that workers don't have to wait around. For a small office that prints a handful of price tags each morning, that speed is more than sufficient, but you'll also be paying for capabilities you'll rarely use. The key is to match that throughput to your real volume. Otherwise, the printer's power becomes a sunk cost. One of the hidden trade-offs with RFID printers is the cost of consumables. The labels themselves are pricier than plain paper labels because they embed a chip and antenna. If you're in a scenario where you need to replace hundreds of tags per week, that cost adds up quickly. However, the upside is that RFID eliminates the need for a manual scan. Step items can be read automatically as they move through a conveyor, which can shave minutes off each process cycle. For a warehouse that processes thousands of SKUs daily, that time savings often justifies the higher consumable expense. If your operation never needs that level of automation, you're basically paying for a feature you won't reap any benefit from. Reliability is where the Zebra brand usually shines, and the 110-4 is no exception. Users report that the printer handles the rough environment of a factory floor without hiccuping. The print head is designed to stay calibrated even when you swap rolls frequently, which is a real boon for people who have to change labels multiple times a day. That durability translates into less maintenance downtime. On the downside, the printer's size and weight make it less portable than a desktop label maker. If you need to move it between stations, you'll need a cart or a dedicated space, which can be a logistical consideration for smaller shops with limited floor space. Software integration is another practical factor. The 110-4 talks to most major label design programs. Zebra's own designer, Nice Label, and even generic drivers for Word or Excel. The RFID encoding is handled by the same driver stack, so you don't need a separate piece of software to write data to the chip. That seamless integration reduces the chance of version mismatches that can cause failed prints. However, the learning curve for configuring RFID fields can be steep if you've never done it before. You'll need to decide what data to store: serial numbers, location codes, batch identifiers, and ensure that your downstream systems can read that data. For a company already using an ERP that supports RFID, the printer slots in nicely. For a business that's just experimenting, you might spend more time in training than you anticipated. Now, who should definitely consider buying this machine? If you run a distribution center, a manufacturing line, a hospital supply department, or any operation where asset visibility is critical and you already have an RFID infrastructure, the 110 She 4.